Welcome to another episode of the Herd podcast. I'm your host, Deb Sarah. The podcast where nothing is off limits. We're going to get down and dirty, shedding light on the things that maybe we feel are too shameful to be spoken about in public with other people. And the whole point and purpose is to help you feel less alone, because so many of us are going through similar things, but we've been taught as a society to not talk about them, to not share about them, and to keep them in the dark. And by doing that, we keep ourselves stuck, we make ourselves sicker, and we create a real disconnect within our society. And I think more now than ever, seeing online this week, especially all of the comments about women's bodies and our reproductive rights, and maybe a lot of fear that's being created online and with society, it's even more important to remember that we are so similar as humans. And fear can drive a lot of our actions and behaviors to create division. And people like Trump really use fear as a way to control and manipulate people. But we've got to remember that we do have a choice here to choose unity. And so in today's podcast, I really want to talk about, I've personally also been reflecting a lot on who I am, who I want to be. And I think this time of year, especially when we're looking at November, December, things can start to ramp up, especially in Australia around, we've got summer coming, the bikini body, the challenges of changing ourselves because of this idea of new year, new me. And so it can be a time of year where maybe we're feeling a bit unsettled because you're thinking, what have I accomplished this year? And a lot of people like to say, oh my gosh, there's not much time left of this year, getting panicked when it comes to Christmas. And I really want to share this podcast. The invite here is to step back from the fast-paced life that we live, step back from maybe a lot of the fear that's being spread out in society at the moment, and take the next little bit of time to ground into your body and self, and maybe shift your perspective a little. Maybe allow yourself to unify. I'm going to be using that word a lot. I think it's so important at this point of time is to get back in touch with who we really are, because I'd love for you to ponder for a moment, are you actually living the life that you want to live? And we're going to dig deep into that in a moment. But as I was saying, it's definitely something that I've been thinking about lately, and especially on the journey of, it's been almost 2 years now, I can't believe that, since I left my corporate job, and I was terrified. I left it thinking, my contract's up, I'm not going to get a new one. Let's go all in on this business and let's see what happens. And taking a risk like that, it was scary. And I cannot believe how much has changed and how much I've evolved within that time. And I'm so, so grateful that I took that risk and that chance to do what I wanted. Because at the time, I was really thinking about what's the safe option, right? What should I do? What does society tell me to do right now? What do I want? And I wasn't entirely sure. I was pretty sure, corporate wasn't for me, and I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to make a living, a full living off going out on my own. But I knew that I had to stay true to myself. And that's what this whole journey has been about, is really staying true to me. And I definitely haven't done that in terms of, it's been a rocky journey to know what that looks like along this path. Because when I first launched my business, and if you've been following me for a little while, you'll have noticed that beginning of last year, it was all about ice baths, it was all about high performance, and it's really adapted and changed in the last 2 years to now, where I'm really passionate and dedicated to advocating for women's safety, and connecting back into our intuition, and allowing women to find that freedom within themselves, as well as that safety, and here's the word again, unity with ourselves and others. And that really is part of the journey. We are made to grow and change. We aren't stagnant beings. We're never going to always be the same. So something that I wanted, say, 5 years ago, at this stage, I really thought, I was married. I thought I'd have kids. I thought I'd have the picket fence, all of that. And to where I am now, that is the complete opposite of what I want right now. And so it's giving ourselves that permission to pause and be brave enough to ask ourselves the question, who am I and what do I want? So let's dive a little bit deeper into that, because it can be quite easy to be like, I know who I am and I know what I want, but I'd love to challenge you. Do you really? Because if we don't actually pause and take the time to deep dive into those questions, it can be quite easy to think we know who we are, but actually it's an illusionatory. I'm trying to, create words here, but it's maybe potentially an illusion or a projection. Maybe the projection's a better word, of what society, maybe our friends, maybe our parents want us to be, but maybe it's not actually who we truly are or who we actually want to be. So as you ponder that question, as we come to the end of the year, now is actually the perfect time to be thinking about these things, because it's the seeds we plant now that will give us the harvest in, next year. Probably not quite January. Things do take time to shift. But we think coming up to the end of the year that it's like these New Year's resolutions. Let's just go hard for a month or a week or maybe a day, depending how long you're able to motivate yourself to do something potentially you don't want to do. And maybe it's actually not in alignment. So, not following through on that 12-week program, is that really because you're the problem? Or is it because you're actually not living in alignment? You're not actually striving for the things that you want. You're striving for the things that society tells you that you want. And I can tell you, I used to do this for a very long time, and many of my clients do as well. Because of the conditioning of society, we don't always realize that these beliefs are actually not our own. When you're striving for, let's say, I use weight loss because it's universal, so many people relate to it. It's such a big thing that the example is something that most people who are listening are going to relate to. But let's say you really want to lose weight and you're looking at that 12-week challenge. Is it the weight loss, the perfect body, and the thinness that you actually want? Or is there something deeper going on there? For example, is it the weight loss, or are you actually just wanting to be happy and confident in your body? Another example, we quite often get told the dream is to own a house. Is it actually the house that you want, or is it the safety and security that the house brings? Let's look at a partnership and a relationship. Is it actually another person or a partnership that you truly want? Or is it love that you're seeking? Because we're quite often sold by the media, conditioning, society, that it's the weight loss, that it's the house, and that it's the partner that we want. And maybe that is what you want. But underneath that, there's usually some kind of emotion or basic need that we're looking for. And you could buy the house and still feel really depressed or really anxious and unsafe, because maybe then you don't have enough money at that point to pay off the mortgage. And so you've just given yourself this stress and you don't feel safe and secure, and you're wondering, but I got the thing. Why don't I feel any better? Because we're sold an illusion that the thing that's outside of ourselves is going to give us what we actually desire and need. But this isn't the case, and this isn't true. And I say this with a jovial manner because I spent most of my life doing this too. You are so not alone in that. And still I get stuck in that, right? Still knowing all of this, that's part of the growth journey, and that's the importance of showing ourselves compassion and understanding. And you get to a point where you can see life in a different way. For example, this is a little bit off topic, but it's just popped into my head, so I'm going to share with you. Last week, Man, it was a challenging week. Anything that could go wrong went wrong. So my dog started to get sick on Tuesday and he was just vomiting everywhere. It was not great. And then Wednesday I woke up with a spider bite and I had temperatures, I could barely move. And it was like this huge joke, right? That everything that could go wrong went wrong. And at first I was getting so frustrated and I was getting like, stupid dog, like blaming my own dog for being sick. It's not his fault. But getting upset and I could barely move and he's vomiting everywhere and I'm having to get up and clean it. And then I didn't have a washing, my clothesline had broken. I needed a new one, but I was on the couch and I couldn't get up. So my friend came and got me and I stumbled down the road and got one. And then I had to get all this toilet paper and then that broke on the way home. And it was just like thing after thing after thing to the point where I just started laughing. I just broke down laughing, realizing we take life so seriously. And even if the example of like blaming my dog for being sick, we look at the external and all of the external circumstances and blame them for how we're feeling on the inside. And I think that when I got to a point of just realizing how funny it was of everything going wrong, that shows us how much control we really have over how we perceive our circumstances. That we can choose to be angry at the dog, be angry at the fact that I'm so tired and exhausted and sleep deprived that I can barely do anything. Or you can just let go of trying to control everything and realize that we actually don't really have much control over life at all, except for our internal world. And so that's why exploring who are you and what you truly want gives you back your power. It means you no longer have to get sucked into the idea that the end of the year is coming up, that I have to be a new person, that I need to do this 12-week program, that rush, that fear, that anxiety that gets us so riled up and takes us out of our true self and steps us into a place of really heightened sense of anxiety and fear. And I'll give you another example. I was really toying up whether to give you client examples or personal examples, but I've been hearing from a number of you who've been loving the podcast lately, loving to get a bit more insight into my life, my journey, and how I've gotten to where I am today. So let's go back to this concept of when we talk about, are we looking at, do you want the weight loss or do you want, say, love or a sense of connection and confidence within yourself? Because I think this is such a big one and a lie that women are sold, that when we have that dream body, when we are thin, all of our problems will magically disappear and we'll be happy. And this is the kind of rhetoric that's going to start to come up, the bikini body, as we move into summer. And so I spent most of my life striving for that perfect body, to look perfect, to be thin. Spoken about this before. I had an eating disorder for like 18 years. So being thin and my body being perfect was always on my mind. I was doing all of the challenges. I was doing all of the things. And most of my life, I couldn't lose weight. And I'll do a more in-depth episode. I'd love to hear from you. Comment below. Let me know. Send me a DM if you'd love an episode on trauma and the body and how when we're unsafe in our bodies generally don't let go of weight. And that's actually protection for our bodies. So I spent so much time trying to lose weight and I couldn't because my body wasn't feeling safe. And then I got to a point, maybe mid-20s, so I had a car accident and I rapidly lost some weight. And then I just kind of stopped eating and I lost all this weight. And I finally had what would be quote unquote, a great body. I'm not going to say the perfect body because it wasn't, there is no perfect body. But let's just say the kind of body that everyone was complimenting me on. I will say though, some people were telling me I was too skinny now. You cannot win. And this is why the internal work matters so much. But I had the body I'd been dreaming of, to have that before and after photo. I'd lost like 25 kilos and it was great. But was it really? Actually, it wasn't. I was sick. I couldn't even see that I had this great body because I would lose weight and I'd be like, 5 more kilos. And you'd get to a point where it was never enough. It was never enough weight loss. It was a never good enough body because it was never about my body. I didn't actually want to have a thin body. That's why I ask, what do you want? And we think that we want that. We truly think that we want the thin body. But that's because I'd been conditioned and programmed from, birth, coming into the world, that thin body means love, acceptance, perfect life. And then I had it. And I had a far from perfect life. I was miserable. And it wasn't until I realized that it's about how we feel on the inside. And I was striving for the wrong thing. And I see this with so many of my clients who come to me. Bloating, the pimples, the hormone issues and insecurities, desperate to lose weight. And then they do the internal work and realize that it was never the weight loss that they wanted. It was the sense of calm, sense of connection to self, intuition, and ability to love oneself. That's what they truly wanted. And it's not that necessarily the desire to lose weight or look good goes away, because it's really difficult. We have to be realistic. Like in this modern world, in a world where patriarchy, the media, the wellness industry want to make money off us. Therefore, they don't want us to feel good within ourselves. So they're going to keep selling you this idea that everything's outside of you, which is why I say even now, me being aware of all this and done a lot of internal work, you can still sometimes get sucked into that. I still have days where I look at my body and self and think, oh, a little bit too much fat there, or I wish that was different. But having done the internal work and knowing who I am, my values and what I stand for, it doesn't grab onto you and hold you in the same way that it used to. So it means that you have the ability to maybe get sucked in for a minute and then you can catch yourself. And it doesn't cause the same kind of desperation or need. And in that as well, the self-sacrifice. So what I mean by that is you want the desired outcome, the weight loss, so much that you sacrifice your own needs, sense of self and value to get the outcome. You starve yourself, you don't eat properly, you over-exercise, you beat yourself up with all of that self-talk, the negative self-talk, and you harm yourself to get something that you don't even necessarily want. And this can be something that's going to take a minute to settle in. I think it's not an easy message to digest, pardon the pun, when you've been told the complete opposite your whole life. And you may not believe me right now, and that's fine. I know I wouldn't have believed me. I wouldn't have listened to this message. I wouldn't have cared, because all I wanted was to look a certain way because I believed that then I would accept myself. But it's not true. And because of my spinal injury and ability to not always be able to move my body properly, I can tell you from experience, I've been fluctuating weights for the last couple of years and I'm starting to stabilize. So someone who's lost 25 kilos twice, who's been multiple sizes, and seeing it with many clients as well, your weight is not the answer, like the weight loss, to feeling unlovable or empty on the inside. It's the same with the relationship, the house, anything external. I'm sorry, you've been sold a lie, but as long as we continue to strive for something outside of ourselves, the patriarchy wins, because we drain our energy, our finances, and our mental thinking. Like, how much time do we waste thinking about what we're reading, what people are thinking of us, How can we lose this weight? How can I get the car? How can I get the better job? How much time are you wasting within your head ruminating on these things of how we can be better instead of living our lives? This trained lack mindset is what keeps us stuck. And it's moving out of lack into abundance and love, which is going to help you feel better and get the things that you want. And by the things that you want, it's the internal connection to self and intuition and feeling that you want. And if I'm wrong, and if that's not what you want, great. That's perfectly fine. We're all different. I don't ever want to speak as if I know you better than you know yourself, because that's the complete opposite of anything I ever want to teach. You are the one who's going to know you best. But you can't know yourself if you don't start to dig a bit deeper below the surface level, right? To go a bit deeper and really question, is this what I want? Is this who I am? Is the path that I'm on what I really want? And it's not even about, because that can seem quite scary potentially. So it's not about even acting change yet. Courage starts with asking the question without living, stepping out and not living in fear anymore. Living in fear is being that good girl, is doing what everyone else wants you to do, is striving for what everyone else wants you to do. But what would it be like to reclaim your life, to step out of the good girl, to step out of the fear, and have the courage even just to ask yourself those questions? And by all means, go deeper, because I'm all about going deep and really exploring, really diving into the fear, really sitting with the discomfort and the pain, because this stuff can be a little bit painful. But it's in the pain we find beauty. And I don't mean that to positize it at all. I love that I'm creating all these words all the time. Positize, illusionary, I think. But I don't mean that ever to discredit pain, because my gosh, I've been through some pain trying to get to where I am and step out of the good girl, step out of the fear. It's not easy. But I would rather feel something. I would rather feel my pain than feel nothing at all, because I've lived in that numb space for a long time. And it's not worth it. I'd rather feel something and have the chance of creating a bigger and better life for myself than live in a place of numbness because I'm too scared, because society has crushed me and dimmed my light and prevented me from stepping into who I really want to be. So if you want a practical example of a way you might start to do this, it can be quite simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. For example, in the last episode, I spoke about my morning ritual of how I love to sit down with the cacao at the moment and just sit in silence and space. And you may be thinking, I don't have time. We all have time. That's another place of stepping out of fear and into courage. Fear that we don't have time. Have the courage that you matter enough to find that space for yourself. Because if you don't find it, it's not going to magically happen. The time is not going to magically pop up. You have to honor yourself and know that you matter enough to make that space for you. So a way that you can start to do this, and I'm going to give a couple little tips now, but something as simple as yesterday, I was literally pondering this going, okay, well, let's just say the weight loss example. Say losing weight isn't actually what I want. It's love. It's like, what is love? And it actually stumped me for a moment, which is really, really interesting. Because I was like, oh, wow, I actually don't really know what love is. And so then I reframed the question and I asked myself, what does love feel like? And that's when I was able to tap into what I wanted. Love for me feels like warmth. It feels like lightness. It feels like calm, and it feels like unconditional acceptance of self. And I can give that to myself. I don't need a man or someone else to give that to me to experience it. It's actually something I can experience to myself, for myself. That's not to say we don't need it. We need other people. Like, we need other people in our lives. But it's a way to shatter the illusion that we need the things outside of ourselves to be okay. The foundations start by tapping into the question of, let's say, what does feeling good in your body, what does it feel like? Instead of what does it look like or the external of it, if you are seeking weight loss, well, what would it feel like to have that body that you want? And in discovering those feelings, you might start to realize you already have some of them sometimes. And actually, maybe it's not about losing the weight or the house, because you can already create those feelings now, right now. No more waiting. No more waiting till January 1, new me, whatever. We don't need a new me. How could you feel that way now? And if you're looking for ways maybe to tap into the body, because I think it's great to do journaling. So having questions like, whose life are you living? How do you want to feel? How is fear keeping you small in your life? What are you afraid of losing by stepping into the person you want to become? So questions like those are fantastic to journal on. And I love to journal. But then there's also the element of getting into the body, because we can quite often become quite intellectual. I love to be intellectual, but that has kept me very stuck, because instead of feeling, I've been thinking, and then I've disconnected my head from my body, and change can't really occur because I can't tap into what I actually want and feel. And I see this with many, many, many of my clients because of the anxiety and the overthinking. We get stuck in our head, and that's the way that our society is functioning at the moment. We're very stuck in a thinking modality because we think that thinking, and we really praise intellectualizing things, but we really, if we want to feel safe within our nervous system and our body, that doesn't come from doing. It comes from being. And so the way that you can do that is, I've got a beautiful free resource, which I'll link down below for you. It's one of my favorite. So you're probably going to hear me going on about it every single episode, because learning to tap into the sensations in your body and start to name them and explore them, that is how you go from I want to look a certain way to I want to feel a certain way. So this November, December, January, what would it be like to start to slow down instead of speed up, to do less instead of doing more, and start to tap into your body, start to tap into who you are and what you want, and go that little layer deeper to cultivate the feelings and the life that you want, rather than continuing on a rat race of disconnection and unhappiness. If you found this episode helpful, give it a thumbs up, a like, and share it with a loved one, someone who could really benefit from this message. If you want to dive deeper into somatics, getting into the body, and really connecting with yourself and others, I offer one-to-one coaching. This Friday the 15th, I'll be running a women's circle where we breathe and we connect. A beautiful night to connect with women, where we talk about the taboo, we talk about everything. Come express yourself, come be yourself. Come alone, come with a friend. It's just a really beautiful environment to connect with like-minded people and realize you are not alone on this journey. We are all human. We are all experiencing very, very similar things. And it helps us to feel less alone when we realize that we're not broken. This is all part of the human experience and journey.